podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Oh, no, I haven't got a beer. Oh, sorry. Hang on. Absolutely essential. Welcome to the latest Love Tennis podlet on Friday night here in Paris, where I'm living the rock and roll lifestyle. It's 10 past 11. I'm at home. I've had a shower and I'm in my sweats. Sweat might just be the word of the day at Roland Garros as well. Possibly the most humid conditions I've ever been in, barring a brief stopover in Singapore airport in February, which might have been worse. I'm joined by Calvin Betton, our resident tennis coach, who is live from the NTC and from a rip-roaring success for his doubles partnership at Surbiton into a final, Calvin.
Yeah, final tomorrow, so that'll be interesting. Do
you get nervous about this stuff?
You know what? I don't. I get more nervous that, especially on grass, that something. We know my thoughts on grass court. I think it's rubbish, especially the rubbish grass courts of Surbiton. I get more nervous that something unlucky will happen.
Right.
That you get into a position where you're the best. They've been the best team this week in every match they've played, but you worry a bit on grass because the rallies are so short. The bounces are bad. You can catch a return late or something. And little things like, I don't know whether people know, but on grass courts, the nets are a lot slacker.
Oh, really?
Because it pulls the net in. If you think about it, on a concrete court, the holes that the net go in, they're solid. Yeah. Whereas on a grass court, it pulls it in. So they have to, they're usually very, very slack. Oh. So you do tend to get a lot more net cords on grass courts.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, most grass courts, they take the nets down at the end of the day because they don't want them pulling on the posts.
Oh, there you go. Learn something new every day. Well, good luck to Julian and Henry tomorrow up against Nedyesov and Qureshi. Well, one of whom I've heard of and who is a recognised doubles player. The other lad I don't particularly know, but we'll see.
I didn't realise that Nedyesov is 50 in the world, I think, or something like that.
Okay.
And Isan Qureshi, who I know pretty well, I know him pretty well because he's the same age as me.
Right, okay. It's dads against lads tomorrow at the final in Surbiton, clearly. Well, let's talk about the bigger tennis going on here in Paris, with all due respect to the Surbiton Challenger. It was men's semi-final day, which I always think is a great ticket to get hold of, although I was then told today that the two semi-finals are on different tickets. So if you wanted to see both semi-finals, you had to buy two tickets, which would have set you back an extortionate amount of money. And instead what they had was a sellout for Nadal versus Zverev and a load of empty seats at Ruud versus Cilic, which I thought was a bit of a shame. But there you have it. These things happen, and there's been plenty of organisational cock-ups this year at the French Open. So we just put that one down on the list of things to improve upon. I probably don't need to tell most people that Rafael Nadal was through to his 14th French Open final. 7-6, 6-all retired. Alexander Zverev suffering a really nasty-looking ankle injury on his right ankle on the very last point of the set before the tiebreak, which never happened, of course. He was taken off in a wheelchair, which I'm not sure I've ever seen at the very highest level. Certainly not for a long time. When they brought it out, I really thought he was going to refuse it, but he basically had no choice. He then came out to retire on crutches, shaking the umpire's hand, Renaud Lichtenstein, and then kind of saluting the crowd with one crutch, which is quite a sweet moment. Calvin, it can be hard to elicit sympathy for Alexander Zverev at the best of times, but I suppose you have to feel sorry for any player who suffers an injury like that.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, it looks pretty bad. Like I know that. Like I've been at Surbiton today, and after the match, you just saw all the players showing each other videos of what happened, and then the faces and the expressions of the players who were watching the videos of what happened told you probably what the severity of it was.
It's one of those things as well, I suppose, in an industry, it probably cuts a bit deeper because, you know, it's a sort of there but by the grace of God go we. You see that happen to someone, you think, crikey, that could be me next week. I mean, we don't see a lot of trauma injuries in tennis, full stop. It's pretty remarkable when they do happen. I remember Bethany Mattek-Sands having a horrible knee injury a few years ago at Wimbledon, and she was on the outside court, and you could hear the screaming for courts and courts away. It was bad. Like, people stopped playing on courts next door. I mean, when something like that happens at a tournament, do you think players? I mean, it's different now because there aren't many players left in this tournament. But does it sometimes people get a bit the heebie-jeebies?
I don't know really. I think that you're thinking about it, but when you're running, you're not thinking about it and that kind of thing. What I'll say about the injury is, you see a lot of ankle injuries, and it might be terrible. I don't know, but ankle injuries tend like that. And again, I said the players were all watching the videos, and there's the still photograph that's going around that a lot of people have shown. Ankle injuries do tend to look a lot worse than what they end up being. Your ankle is pretty flexible. And whenever I hear about an ankle, because I didn't see it when it happened, whenever I hear about an ankle injury, I always ask which way the foot went.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, if it goes the way that Zverev's went, there's a good chance it's not as bad as what it looks.
Yes, it's to describe it, he was sliding to his right, and the foot caught in the clay, and he went over it. It's the way that almost anyone will have experienced just rolling their ankle a little bit like that. The worst tennis injury I've ever seen was Michael Stick, and he ran and his ankle went the other way. It was. I remember watching the match live. It was some indoor tournament at the end of the year, and he was out for about 18 months. Wow.
If it goes that way, and an ankle injury, even the screaming, and he looked in a bad way, and I don't wish to compare myself with Alexander Zverev in any way, good or bad. But I've actually I remember I went over my ankle really bad once, and I honestly thought I'd broke it. I thought I broke it, or there was serious ligament damage, and it's the most pain I've ever felt. And it was like, it took a bit. 10 days later, it felt a lot better. Yeah. And it turned out it was just a really, really bad sprain. But if you'd have told me that at the start, I'd have thought, no, that this is definitely broken.
I have had a similar experience playing football on grass where, ankle goes completely flat out. And the first second and a half, I remember specifically thinking in the first second and a half, oh, good, my foot is going to fall off. And then about 5 seconds in thinking, actually, this might not be that bad, but I probably can't just jump up because I did make a bit of a fuss. And I'd sprained it a bit, but it's just, I'm not saying that's what happened with Zverev. It was clearly bad. Like, he wouldn't have, if he thought he could have strapped that up and served on one leg, I've absolutely no doubt he would have done. But I know because Nadal said afterwards that he was in the medical room with him, which I always think is weird. Well, I thought it was weird when he said it because there's not many players who could just be like, yeah, I'll just come in with you. But they said he...
Especially not Nadal, who's obsessed about not letting anyone know what injuries he has.
Yeah, exactly.
It's always like, yeah, I've got a leg injury. He's so secretive, but then someone else is getting treatment and Nadal's storming in there.
Nadal's in there for a consult. But he said they were doing an ultrasound on Sasha Zverev's ankle, so they will have a vague idea of the level of damage already. Obviously, ultrasounds aren't perfect. You need to get an MRI. You can't do that until the swelling's gone down a bit. So, they won't know the full extent. I think we can rule him out of Wimbledon, certainly.
He won't be playing at Wimbledon. There's no chance.
Be surprised. I mean, the US Open is only, 3 months away. If he's done ligament damage, which is what I suspect he's done.
I suspect there is. My one concern is, and Henry, the lad I coach, who's had a serious ankle injury, he made a good point that he thought that it might not even be the ankle, and this is where it might get seriously dangerous. He thought it might be lower leg, it went. If you look, and he said he thought it looked higher than the ankle.
They talk about this in American football. They talk about the high ankle sprain.
Yeah.
And it's those ligaments that go up your leg, and that could be quite serious.
But again, we were looking at like a video and a still photograph, and it's hard to do.
As I say, difficult to elicit sympathy for Alexander Zverev, but I did have some. The screams were very loud, and I actually had a bit of respect for him when he came back out on crutches, ostensibly to shake the umpire's hand. Like, that was the first thing he came out to do, and to sort of formally retire. And Rafa gave him a big hug, and that was. And then he sort of, quite sweetly raised one crutch to the crowd as he walked off, and they cheered him. And there are certain moments that maybe humble people a bit. I don't know if this will humble Sasha Zverev, but
quite a smart move. And I don't know if I'm going to be a bit cynical here. I suppose quite a smart move because he'll be back at the French, and the French remember stuff like that. And,
quite possibly.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's out. Rafa Nadal is through. What we should talk about is the tennis, because for 3 hours before that, Zverev and Nadal just beat 7 bells out of each other. The wider context for this is that it has been all day in Paris, and I woke up this morning and walked out the door and thought, oh, this is going to be unpleasant. So humid. Completely overcast, clearly a thunderstorm on the way. And indeed, it was raining. It started raining about 15 minutes before Nadal Zverev started, and it was heavy, really humid conditions. And the roof on Chatrier, they put it on, obviously. It's a great thing. We got the match on. But they don't have, and I certainly never heard, a big air conditioning or dehumidifying or ventilating system. If you're at Wimbledon and they get the roof on, you'll hear basically big fans churning, to move the air through to deal with the humidity. And they don't have any of that. Now, I did notice the design of Chatrier is a bit different. It's kind of open at the sides, if you like. At the top of the stands, almost like someone's just taken a lid and, roughly put it on. Because pigeons fly in and out of them. But they needed a way to move the air through there because 98 minutes, I think the first set was, because they just couldn't get the ball through the court. I mean, Calvin, you'll be able to explain in probably better detail what humidity does to a tennis ball and to a tennis match on clay.
It fluffs it up a little bit. I don't think humidity in itself does a whole lot of difference. It's more the effect that it has on the players, in that they find it harder to breathe. It's just muggy and sweaty, and the balls obviously get the players put them in their hands. Their hands are wet. They'll pick up a little bit more clay and that kind of thing. It just slows it down.
Nadal by the end of the first set wasn't putting his second serve ball in his pocket because he was getting so wet.
Yeah, I noticed that.
I mean, look, it didn't. I was before this. I was on in a Twitter space with Miles, who does a really good podcast, and we were talking about it, and I said, look, was it still good to watch on TV? And I think most people said, yeah, it really was still good to watch on TV. I mean, I think what we saw in the first set, and I know, Calvin, you'll have been on court, but Sasha Zverev made 15 of his 16 first serves. So he was serving at 96% for the first 8 games of the match or whatever. Like, when he does that, it's quite hard to beat.
Oh, yeah, he's serious. That's the best of Zverev. And it's funny because I was talking with a player the other day about what player, because I bang on a lot about how you judge a player by their middle level and their bottom level, not their top. And he said, well, who's got the best top level? Zverev's got to be up there.
Yeah. To
be fair, if they play their best, if everything goes their way, who's tough to beat? Zverev's definitely up there.
I mean, the first 6 games I would suggest were Zverev's top level. His serve was almost perfect. His backhand's really good. It's really good. But then what you got was then he was serving at 4-3, and in one game you got all of the really bad bits of Zverev. He had three forehands that missed the baseline by 10 feet, 15 feet. He had 2 double faults and one of the worst drop shots I've ever seen. It was a short ball, it was a decent serve that Rafa had just about got over. It was a short ball and he should have just belted it anywhere. And he tried to play a drop shot and Rafa hit the winner on the service line. He only had to come up half the court. He just has no touch.
That's no touch whatsoever, does he? I mean, I only saw the tiebreak. I came into the clubhouse, I saw the whole of the tiebreak at the end of the first set, and
special tiebreak.
But I think, as we said in our WhatsApp group, I think towards the end, I think from 5-2 on, he must have had 5 short balls. Didn't win any of the points. Yeah. He had 2 volleys. I think on 2 of his set points, he had 2 volleys and missed them both. And even the Nadal, the running forehand that everyone was raving about. You've got to put that away.
6-4, yeah.
You've got to put that away. I know it's a great shot from Nadal, but you've got proper probably the best backhand in the world, Zverev, I'd say.
Yeah.
And you've got short. It's shorter than short. That's what we'd call a finish.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. I mean, just for people who haven't seen it, I mean, if you head to my Twitter, you'll find it. I posted the video, but Nadal played a defensive shot on the backhand side from outside, but like both of his feet were outside both tram lines, and it was a sliding defensive backhand. You just get it back into court, and as you say, Zverev had a short backhand which he then hit to the other corner, and Nadal read it relatively early, got there, and then hit an on-the-run cross-court pass, that bounced, just nosedived after it got over the net. I think what was amazing about it, as you say, Zverev should have put it away. But what was amazing about it was that Nadal had hit one forehand winner the entire set.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine watching Rafa Nadal for 85, 90 minutes and not seeing him hit more than one forehand winner. And to pull it out at that point, it was pretty stupid.
But then he hit another one, didn't he? Because then later on, it might have been to win the set. Zverev had
it was.
Short forehand.
Yeah.
Like, just gave him it. And like, what are you doing? It really was rubbish from him at that moment. Because as a player, you're thinking the best you can hope for is that you get that. And it's one of those people always go, it's against Nadal. Like, look, Zverev's the fourth best player in the world. Or ranking wise, you've got to put short balls away. That was nonsense at the end of that tiebreak from him.
And also the argument, it's Nadal. Well, you've got to hit the lines then. Like if you miss if you have to miss, but like if it's Nadal, you have to go for a line rather than hit a conservative shot.
And also, if he read that forehand, he read that backhand well, the first one, but he read it well because he knows what Zverev's going to do.
Yeah.
And if you play against players if you play against good defenders, it's one of the basic tactics that tennis players have. If you play against players who defend well, who are fast, and you have finishing balls, you go back behind. Because what they tend to do is they set off early.
Yeah.
Fast players, they set off early, so you go back behind and then they'll tend not to do it. And Nadal knew that Zverev was going to do that. And Nadal's actually fascinating to watch on stuff like that. I sometimes when I'm watching Nadal, I'll do the live rewind thing on my TV because you can see how early he goes.
He goes really early. But
there was one the other day. I forget who he was playing. Who did he play in the last round?
Djokovic,
it was, yeah. It was yeah, so he hit a backhand. He hit a backhand cross court when Djokovic came to the net. And then Djokovic just hit like a drop volley cross court off his forehand. And Nadal sprinted there and put it past him. And I remember thinking when he's hit it, that's the only shot that Djokovic could have hit. Yeah. And so I rewound it to see how early Nadal went, and Nadal hit his backhand and immediately started running forward. Yeah. So when he knows he's got it down at Djokovic's feet, he knows the only shot that Djokovic has got is the cross-court backhand, is the cross-court drop shot. So what looks like extreme brilliant anticipation, it's more that they figure out there's only one shot they've got here. And that's what anticipation really is in tennis. It's not knowing what your opponent is going to do next. It's knowing what they can't do. Yeah. It's taking out the options. And Nadal knew that Djokovic couldn't do anything else other than that shot.
It was, I mean, he is a masterful player to watch, Nadal. What I think, I've said this before, I think Nadal's the most underrated volleyer in tennis. Like I think he's legitimately a decent volleyer.
No, he is, yeah.
And he gets himself, and in the second set against Zverev, his forehand was just pap, basically. He had nothing, because he said afterwards he couldn't generate any spin because the balls were so wet or humid. And so he basically started playing a lot of drop shots and, serving and volleying on big points. And he really does have some sensational touch.
He does, yeah.
You're comparing it to Zverev, I guess, but it was special.
He does have great touch, and also he's the best decision maker of all time. You watch him and you can watch 5 hours of Nadal and you won't go, what are you doing? You just won't do it. He might, sometimes the execution can be off, as it can with anybody, but the shot is always the right shot. Yeah. Apart from actually today when he played a couple of drop shots that I thought, I'm not really sure why you're doing those. He's just tremendous on that front.
He's going to play Casper Ruud in the final, who saw off Marin Cilic in 4 sets. Relatively comfortable in the end. He lost the first set, but then really took control of the match. There was a brief interruption when a woman with 1,028 days later, written on her T-shirt, ran on and chained herself, cable tied herself to the net, which is a new one on me. I think there was a 15-minute delay. Players were taken off, and then they came back on. And as I was leaving the site today, there was a police car waiting for her. Think of that whatever you think. I'm not sure we're going to get into it. What is interesting, I'm not sure the Cilic-Ruud match stands up hugely to us investigating it, but Ruud has the better chance of beating Nadal out of those two, right?
Yeah, he does. Quick one. What was the 1,028 days later?
Climate emergency protest.
Oh, right. Okay, fair enough.
Well, yeah, my thoughts exactly.
Yeah. Look, I'm quite an environmentalist, but yeah, that's a new one on me. He definitely. Yeah, Ruud's had the better chance of beating Nadal. Nadal usually just chops Cilic up whenever they play, doesn't he?
Yeah, exactly. We'll maybe spend a bit more time tomorrow talking about the men's final, what that might hold.
I'll just quick nip in there about. I was going to say about Nadal. It was quite funny because when the tiebreak was being played today, I was watching it in the players' area in Surbiton. There are a few coaches there, and it's funny how this command that Nadal has on people. Because during the tiebreak, one of the coaches, a Spanish guy who speaks really good English, he said, thing is with Nadal now, he's just locked down and he's not going to miss. He's just come into that and he won't miss. He's not. There's no chance he's missing a ball. And on the next point, 3 or 4 shots in, Nadal netted a forehand, and the guy just didn't acknowledge it. And, and it's like, yeah, I kind of get what you mean. He does do that, but also like when is Nadal? It's not like Nadal ever is spraying errors everywhere. Exactly. That's what he does, but it's just one of those strange anomalies that we just take. When Nadal makes an error, we ignore the errors.
Yeah, like today when he played a couple of drop shots that were bad decisions. He's just to keep us honest, to make sure that he can keep us honest. I think we should move on to the women's final, which is tomorrow. It's a 3:00 start here in Paris, so 2 p.m. Over in the UK. Coco Gauff up against Iga Swiatek. As I wrote in the I newspaper today, which I would recommend buying the I Weekend tomorrow, by the way, because I think it's only 70p. It's 110 pages, and it's better than all the other weekend papers. And I think if you don't normally buy a paper, just try it. Anyway, I wrote something saying 4 years ago, Coco Gauff won French Open Juniors here. And I went back and looked at the draw. And in the semi-final, she beat Leylah Fernandez. And in the final, she beat Katie McInally, one of her good friends, fellow American. But McInally had knocked out and, in fact, saved a match point against, in the semi-final, Iga Swiatek. So there's clearly a generation coming through here to do some damage on clay. Amazing, Calvin, to have a 21-year-old against an 18-year-old in a French Open final. And it's also definitely the final that this tournament needed, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm interested to see how it goes. I'm a bit cautious because I think earlier in the year, before Swiatek had gone on her massive run, so earlier the year or last year, maybe, I don't know. These two played each other, and I really hyped it up, and Swiatek ended up winning it about 4-0 or something. So I'm a bit cautious about hyping it too much, but I am looking forward to it.
They played in Miami earlier this year in March, and it was 6-3, 6-1. But it was in the middle of, probably the greatest run of the 21st century. It will, in fact, be, if Swiatek wins tomorrow, the joint greatest winning streak in the 21st century in the WTA, joint level with Venus Williams and her streak around the very beginning of the century. In terms of what Gauff can do to hurt Swiatek or upset Swiatek, she's the bigger server for a start.
Yeah, she's big, so she can do damage. There's no question. She's probably, I don't know. I'd say off the top of my head, she might hit a little bit bigger overall than Swiatek does. Swiatek's probably a better match. Well, she is a better match player than Gauff right now, but I think that's something that Gauff will sort out. But what I would say, I very much doubt this is the last time that we're going to see these two in the final of a major.
You certainly hope so. She's the youngest Grand Slam finalist since Maria Sharapova in 2004, Coco Gauff, who's 18 and just a couple of months. I think what has been so impressive about her throughout is just how kind of calm she's been. She said, someone said, "Do you get nervous?" And she said, "Well, honestly, I sometimes wake up a little bit nervous, but then I go for a walk and I kind of feel a bit better. And she also talks about how it's not the end of the world if she loses. Now, I sometimes think that's quite a dangerous mindset. I sometimes don't I really like the sort of, I have to win, this is be all end all. But I think what that sometimes can create is when you then face a bit of failure, like you lose the first set, it can create sort of crisis mode. If you're that sort of hyped up about winning and then you're a set down, if you can't cope with that, and I think you, Calvin, you'll probably know players who are like that, it can just create massive crises.
It's more just something that we talk about, and again, it's different levels. But we spoke a lot about the lad who I coach, Henry, and his partner are currently on I don't know what it is, maybe a 20-match winning streak at doubles. And we were talking today with his partner's coach and the two lads about the what ifs. What we can set the game plan and everything. What if it doesn't work out today? What happens if we find ourselves a set and a breakdown? What are we going to do? And I think that's what players don't often think about, the what if question. We could come on with the tactic and I'm going to compete, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, this is what I'm going to do. But what if that's not working? And that is hugely important. And that's what the best players deal with. That's why Djokovic is, as I keep saying, the best match player of all time in any sport. That there's nobody who deals with the what ifs more than Djokovic does.
I think as well, I mean, without getting off topic too much, it must be different in doubles and singles as well, because there must be a dynamic in doubles at a sit down. Do you kind of employ one of them to be the hype man and one of them to be the kind of calm man?
You usually do. You don't really tell them to do that, but there usually is one person who drives the energy. I know that, for example, in Salisbury and Ram, that Ram is the driver. And that's not to mean that either is the better player. Just one will usually be more vocal and that kind of thing. So, and
presumably in those kind of what-if moments, that's when you need your vocalizer to sort of step up.
It's energy. It's always energy in doubles. That's the main thing. And that's what you'll always find. It's one of the key aspects of the British double system is energy. There's always plenty of energy on court. But but I think in singles, it's a big thing as well. What you say is almost what you say to yourself. That you can, rather than getting caught up in, this is happening, what's happening, why, what am I doing, why is this not working, to go, right, what do I do now then? It's doing the best with what you can in the here and now.
I mean, Gauff has faced a bit of adversity in this tournament. Iga Swiatek has talked almost to death about what she's going to do when she finally gets in trouble. And she talked about the quarterfinal, actually, when she beat Zheng Qinwen, having lost the first set, and how she was glad to have had that kind of experience from a mental perspective. I would say that Coco Gauff's results, I mean, she's not dropped a set thus far in the tournament. In some ways, she's gone under the radar in that sense. But against Martina Trevisan, she did not start very well, and she was getting wound up by Trevisan's grunt, and she was complaining to the umpire about that. They had a bit of a fight about a mark, quite a long fight, actually. And I thought, hang on, are we seeing what happens to Coco Gauff under pressure? And actually, she just kind of worked it out and stayed with it and didn't let Trevisan phase her too much. And I guess when you win a junior title at 14, and she was the youngest junior winner of a Grand Slam title since Hingis, I think, and then you do what she did to Venus at Wimbledon, she's someone who seems to absolutely love the pressure. Like, she talks about being a social activist, and, during the Black Lives Matter stuff in America, she went to I guess, kind of rally near where she lived and gave a big speech. It wasn't like that was forced into her. That wasn't losing a first set. That was her choosing to be the centre of attention. I wonder if that attitude kind of translates onto the court to a kind of calmness and an owning of the moment.
Yeah, I don't think she ever feels out of place. I think that's one of the things. And it's one of those as well. She's clearly extremely intelligent, but she also seems like she's a pretty cool person to be around. Yeah, as well. Everyone seems to like her. I know that I'll see she's quite active on social media, I think, but you can tell it's her on her social media. It's definitely not a management or that kind of thing. She's somehow managed to get into that place where she's very competitive and also very well liked, and it's
Yeah.
usually one or the other.
Yes, and I think I said this the other day, but it bears repeating. She doesn't roam around with a massive entourage. There are, her mum and dad are there.
Yeah.
There's quite a few people in her box. There will be more people in her box for the final. I guarantee there's one bloke will definitely be there.
He's got about 9 players in this tournament, hasn't he? I'm amazed that he manages to do anything. Weird that he suddenly wasn't coaching Stefanos Tsitsipas the other day when one of his other players won that.
I don't know what you're supposed to do there. You could do the Tony Nadal of being like, I'm actually going to be really neutral in this, but I'm going to sit front row of the presidential box and get in everyone's face.
Got to sit front row on whoever's winning at the time.
But anyway, what I was going to say is that I've seen her walking around the site a lot this week because she's also in the doubles final on Sunday, which, with Jesper Gula, and they may well win it. But every time I've seen her wandering around, she's pretty much on her own or with quite a small group. She's super independent. I don't think she thinks she's big time. She wears a bucket hat to press conferences, which I can really respect. I think she's just massively good news, and I don't know who I want to win. I think the ideal would be Gauff wins this and Swiatek wins Wimbledon, because just from a selfish perspective, British people don't know who Iga Swiatek is yet. They really don't.
Yeah, I'd like Gauff to win tomorrow, and I think Swiatek's great. As we spoke about last night, we're getting to a bit there where like, is this good for the women's game that somebody's dominating so much?
Yeah.
And you don't want to see that. I don't mind somebody being the best, but you want competition, I think. Because you have that weird period. We're in that weird period now, aren't we, where somebody's dominating, but nobody really knows about it outside of the sport.
Yeah.
If we kind of get she wins Wimbledon and the US Open, for example, and tomorrow, then it'll be one of those where she then will become a superstar because everybody will start knowing there's this girl in tennis who's just winning everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be interesting to see how the summer pans out from that perspective. If you had to pick a winner and predict a winner, Calvin, I mean, would you stick with Swiatek?
I think Swiatek's going to win, probably, yeah.
Comfortably?
Yeah, I could see it being like a 4-3 or something like that.
I'm slightly concerned that it might be something like that. I desperately hope it's not, just for the good of the game and for the good of Coco Gauff, but I'm slightly concerned it might.
I mean, we're due a really good women's major final, aren't we?
Well, we've had some stinkers, that's for sure.
Yeah, and long doesn't always mean good either, as we saw at Wimbledon last year.
Yes, agreed. Well, that is, of course, as I mentioned, 2 p.m. UK time, 3 p.m. local, goodness knows what time. If you're in the US, incidentally, because I know we have a lot of US listeners, it is on, I believe, NBC in the US. I know the French Open hasn't been on free-to-air TV in the States, but it is on NBC, and then I think it's on delay. So it'll be like a 2 p.m. broadcast on Tennis Channel if you want to avoid the result and watch it at a reasonable time. But that's good news as well, just for kind of reaching a few more people. We'll be back tomorrow with yet another podlet to look back at that match and also look forward to Nadal versus Ruud. Thanks very much for listening.
Sports Social Podcast Network.